Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. I am very excited to stand in for Dr. Boleg today. When I was a guest on the salon about a year ago, I wore my Cite Black Women t-shirt, and I think that's what made her think I'd be interested in hosting this session. Um, I would like to start. Well, I'll introduce myself first. So, I'm Liz Cole. I'm a faculty member at the University of Michigan, where I'm in the departments of psychology and in women's and gender studies. And I also have a courtesy appointment in Afro-American and African studies. And I'm also the director of the National Center for Institutional Diversity. You might be familiar with us. You might want to join our mailing list. I'm really delighted to have some of the members of the Cite Black Women Collective here with us today. And I think it would be most appropriate for them to unmute, turn on their cameras, and I would like to ask each of them to tell us a little bit about themselves, and then also get us started by talking about what do you most want to share with us today? What was on your mind coming into the session today? What do you want us to know about your work? Why don't we start with Dr. Pirtle?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon from California. My name is Dr. Whitney Pirtle, and I am a member of the Cite Black Women Collective. For the last 10 years, I've been in sociology at the University of California, Merced, but as this bio shares, I am now at UCLA in community health sciences within the Fielding School of Public Health. So, as someone in public health, I always think of myself as a sociologist who crosses the fields of public health and Black studies. And those are not fields that often talk to one another. So it's been an interesting journey for me and really relies on reading broadly across disciplines and engaging in a broadened version of Black radical thought traditions in general. Um, I think I was a junior scholar when I saw, probably from Twitter, this thing called hashtag Cite Black Women. And I was in sociology. And I remember feeling really frustrated with sort of how sociology had incorporated me as a Black woman and Black women historically. And so I tweeted something like, everyone should wear their Cite Black Women t-shirts or buy them and wear them on Saturday of this conference, and let's make a statement. And that got amplified in really fascinating ways. And I don't know, I would say at least 100 sociologists were wearing Cite Black Women at our conference. And I was really thankful for the people who stood up and tried to be a part. And that was a moment that shifted me a little bit in my engagement to the field. Okay, we can continue to be loud and wear bright shirts and say what we want, but we have to sort of demand that on our own. And so for the next conference, I decided to host a panel with Cite Black Women where Kristen was a panelist, Tressie McMillan-Cotton was a panelist, Crystal Fleming was a panelist, and that is now up on the Cite Black Women website. You can see as a podcast. So for a while, we had a large podcast going. But in that moment, in those spaces where we were able to sort of really define ourselves for ourselves and think about what our intellectual contributions are for the field, really helped me re-engage with my own discipline of sociology. And that has been what pulled me into Cite Black Women. But I do think it's a long-standing sort of endeavor and a praxis that really does rely deeply on standpoint theorizing, which just means that we are able to define ourselves and our contributions, and they should be read and engaged in the same merit as anybody else. Um, so that's how I will start this conversation, and I think I can pass it over to Daisy now. Dr. Guzman, sorry.
Good evening. I am in Senegal and I am at the Association of Black Anthropologists conference. And that's how I really enter Cite Black Women with Kristen Smith as my mentor, having the enter, entering the conversation post podcast, post conference, and really using Cite Black Women to shape my dissertation and my dissertation proposal. Cite Black Women was at the core of how I formulated what I was constructing to talk about Garifuna women's migration from Guatemala to New York City. How do we talk about a group of people that were often silenced within the National Archive? And how do I talk about the women that were further silenced within that community? So I construct a historical narrative of Garifuna women's migration between 1960 and 1996, and what was the gendered labor and gendered movement of those women across the hemisphere. To do that, I have to reconstruct the archive that doesn't exist in the written word. It is all oral history. So using Toni Morrison, using Black literature, using music, um, actual archives. How are people writing about Black women in South America and other places in Latin America in order to construct how can I write these oral histories in a cohesive ways that other people can now um, add to the story? So when I think of Cite Black Women, of course, agreeing reading across the disciplines, but how are we reading people that we have placed within disciplines? Right? How are we reading Toni Morrison as a theorist? So I lean heavily on the side of memory in order to construct uh, Garifuna women's ancestral home. I lean on Edridge Danticat. I lean on Beatriz Nacimiento and reshaping where other people have placed them and thinking of them as geographers, as ethnographers, and really playing with what does discipline even mean. So thank you all for having us here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. And I'm taking a few notes. I have heard that our third panelist, Dr. Yasmiyn Irizarry, has joined. Yasmin, are you here? Just to catch you
I
up a
am.
little bit.
Apologies for my delay. I
Oh,
updated my computer and it crashed, so I'm.
you are just in time. I was asking each of the collective members to, well, first of all, I'm Liz Cole, and I was asking each of the collective members to just tell us a little bit about yourselves. And then if you could talk a little bit about what is it that you most want to share here today? I wanted to make sure everybody had a little time on the floor to themselves so that they can make sure what they're bringing here gets said.
Hi, so Yasmiyn Irizarry. I am a race scholar and quantitative sociologist, associate professor of African and African diaspora studies at the University of Texas at Austin, and the founding director of the Numbers for Justice Lab. My work is focuses on the intersection of racial theory and quantitative methodology, and I apply those in a number of different areas, including looking at schooling context, looking at race measurement and ascription, and also looking at justice and social control, so policing, school, carceral practices, and such. And I guess um, what I want to think about today is about kind of like shining a light on invisibility and really thinking about the kind of labor that is embodied in a Black feminist praxis of citation and a Black feminist praxis of research and of intellectual contributions, and to shine a light both on that labor and also to suggest that labor should be normalized, that everyone should be investing in that labor. When I think about Cite Black Women, I think about the intellectual contributions of the Black women that I work with and that I know, that I read, and that I try to honor. But I also think about the labor that they put into their own effort, into acknowledgement, into sharing, into recognizing everyone, and also how important that praxis is, and how that in the kind of rush we're in now in this capitalist system and in this system of rush, that people aren't as invested in making that same kind of time, and how important that time actually is, and how that should be normalized. So bringing that conversation, especially someone who's in quantitative spaces where there's almost this belief that if Black women are in that space, that we don't even do quantitative work. There's very little acknowledgement of the labor and the foundational work being done in these kinds of spaces, or an acknowledgement that women have been wielding numbers for a very long time. I'd like to honor Ida B. Wells and her work from the late 1800s. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We also have a couple of videos from members of the collective who weren't able to be here today, and I think Natalie's going to take a moment to show those.
I'm Micaela Machicote. I'm an independent scholar, storyteller, artist, and I'm also a very proud member of the Cite Black Women Collective, where I've worked on the website, I've worked on the social media, the podcast, and also had a chance to bring my own artistic practice into the movement's online presence and design. For me, Citing Black Women is about more than just footnotes or academic integrity, right? It's about honoring the intellectual labor, the care, and the theorizing that Black women have always done, and often without recognition. For me, it's about lineage, it's about accountability, and it's about making sure that our names do not get lost in someone else's summary. In my own work, where I look at Black women's practices of marriage and fugitivity in Chicago, I use intersectionality not just as a framework, but as a method. It shows up in how I approach research, who I center, how I listen, and even how I create. My own forthcoming book, Fugitive Futures, is one expression of that, but so is my art, my paintings, my poetry, my forthcoming website that I'll be rolling out soon, and also in my collaborations with other Black women. So I don't just cite Black women, I live it, I work it, and I create with it. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me.
Hello, my name is Dr. Erica Williams, and I'm an anthropologist and a professor of anthropology and chair of the Sociology and Anthropology Department at Spelman College, which is a historically Black college for women in Atlanta, Georgia. I graduated with my PhD in anthropology in 2010 from Stanford, and I've been at Spelman ever since. I joined the Cite Black Women Collective very early on, and I remember being involved in selling the Cite Black Women t-shirts at conferences like the National Women's Studies Association and the American Anthropological Association. I remember tweeting on Sundays for the Cite Black Women campaigns on Twitter when Twitter was still Twitter, tweeting out quotes from Black women authors, and just sharing the intellectual production of Black women. I've also written blogs for the Cite Black Women website about self-care and breast cancer for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I also did a few podcasts. I interviewed Beverly Guy Sheftall and also did an interview with Amara Jones on the importance of centering Black trans women. I think the Cite Black Women Project is really important because it's about recognizing the intellectual production of Black women across borders, transnationally. So it challenges US hegemony in the academy. We really want to connect and center the voices of Black women from places like Brazil, that I happen to know well, but other parts of Latin America, the African continent, the Caribbean, and even Europe. So I'm very excited to be a part of Cite Black Women, and I just hope to spread the love.